that's okay. Don't worry about it for now. Okay. So what I had done in mine, I've changed my heading to 404 and my response from hello world to not found, but you notice when I ran it, when I refreshed, it still said hello world. Now I've stopped the server. I pressed Control C to stop the server. I have a active cursor again at command prompt. What will happen now if I refresh the browser? So I've changed my code. Right, now it's going to try and load localhost 3000, but I've stopped the server, so now I'm getting connection refused, it's not available. So to restart, I'll need to run my server.js again. My server's running again. And now it shows me that I've gotten 404 not found. So this can be a bit of a pain because every time we make a change in our Node application when we're developing this way, it means we have to stop the server, then restart it, stop it, then restart it, which is a pain. So we'll have a workaround for this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop my server for a minute. I'm going to put my code back to 200. I'll restart it again. So now it's running. I'll change it back to hello world. So now I get my 200 back. So there's a useful little package. We're actually going to use npm to install a package into this application. There's a package called nodemon. And if we look up the description on npm, we can see what nodemon does. So nodemon is a simple monitoring script for use during development of a Node.js app. Well, that's what we're doing. We don't need to run nodemon once our application is in production. So here's what nodemon does. It watches our directory, kind of like the way Git monitors for changes. And as soon as any files are changed, nodemon automatically restarts your local server. Well, that's useful. Right? Now I can go and change my JavaScript files, and as soon as nodemon notices a change, it'll restart the app for me. So I don't have to constantly stop and start the server. So now they recommend we could run the command npm install nodemon. That will install it. But they've said the recommended way is actually here, npm install -g nodemon. What does that -g indicate?
Global.
Right, so we want to install nodemon globally. That means if we install it now with the -g, we can use it every week. We don't have to reinstall it. It's installed globally on our system. So we can use nodemon with any of our applications. So we're going to want to install this from package manager. So I have to stop my server again. And now I'll run the command npm install -g nodemon.
Mac users will need to put this under a sudo command.
Yes, thank you. So, and if I'm not mistaken, you just put sudo before this, right?
Yeah,
Sudo space npm install -g nodemon.
And then it will prompt you for your password.
The code's right here. You're doing this. Kaylee, I can see you squinting at my command prompt.
That's because
Just get it. I know. Just get it from here.
my eye doctor won't cut my prescription.
So you'll notice this kind of, what this does as this downloads. We'll see what it does. So what npm actually goes, takes a copy, and it installs it. Because we chose global, this is where it gets installed. In your user directory and inside app data, roaming npm node modules, it installs it there. That's where it's available globally. If we didn't include the -g, well, actually, we'll install another package just to try it. So nodemon, well, we'll try and get nodemon running now. So I'll relaunch my application. We'll see if this works. I'll run server.js again. So it's running, it says 200 hello world. Now I'm going to make a change. I'll go back to my code file. Maybe I'll just add an exclamation mark. So it says hello world with an exclamation mark. Just make any change to the file. And I'll hit save. Now notice, there's no indication here my application's restarted. If I refresh, I'm still getting the old version. There's no exclamation mark. We haven't done anything wrong. The only thing is, if we want to use nodemon, we need to launch the application in a different way. So I'm going to stop my server for a minute. So instead of running my application using node server.js, I'm going to use package manager to actually launch it. I'm going to try the command npm start. So this now launches my server.js. It says my server's running. So now I've got my change, but we still don't really know if nodemon works because I stopped and restarted the server. I want nodemon to do this automatically. So I'm going to make another change now to my JS file. And we'll see nodemon should restart it.
Question is like how does the server is running, how to close it?
How to close it? You either close the command prompt.
Then restart it?
Yeah, well, we won't have to. Watch what happens. I'm going to make another change. I'll put in 2 more exclamation marks. So it's now hello world with 3 exclamation marks. So I save that change. This isn't working the way I expected it to. My nodemon doesn't seem to be running.
Because npm star is running node server.js.
Okay, sorry, we'll have to change something else. I think in package.json, I want to make another change. Ah, right, we want this. Instead of main, in my script section, I'm going to add this. We want start to be nodemon server.js. So I'm adding in line 7. And I think I'm going to take out this main for now. I'm going to take out line 5. And our startup, we're telling the application, when you start, use nodemon. We'll try it this way. So line 6 is new, and I took out what was line 5. We'll try it like this. So I'm going to start it, stop it again, and restart. Control C stops the server. There. Now it started using nodemon. So the nodemon process has now launched my application. So my server's running. I now have 3 exclamation marks. Now my change should work. I'm going to go back to my code editor. Go back to server.js. I'm going to take out all of those exclamation marks, put it back to hello world, and when I click save, notice what nodemon does. It says restarting due to changes. So I just change that JavaScript file and save my change. And now when I refresh, I get the updated version. Those exclamation marks are gone. So I'll just put this back so you can see. So we added in line 6, that's highlighted in blue. We've told the application to start using NodeMon so we can save changes and do auto restarts. And then I used npm start to get it launched. Now, anytime I make a change, NodeMon will be monitoring and will automatically restart my server when a change has been saved.
It's not installing, it's saying error retrieving current directory, get CWD, not access current directory, which is fine.
You may get one error, but you may be able to, I got this error, optional deployment failed, but it's continuing.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, I'll have to come and have a look at it. Did you run it with sudo?
Yeah.
How do you stop the server again?
Control C.
All systems, so it's control on your Mac. Yeah, I'm getting I cannot find module.
Cannot find module, and which, does it say which module? Is it NodeMon?
It's start.
Sorry?
It's start one.
Start module? I'll have to come. So when do you get that, Matt? When you try and run npm start? We're going to install one other package in here, but we won't install it globally. We're going to install it locally into this application so we can see the difference between doing a global install of a package and doing a local install. Okay. Now, if I want, I can keep my server. I got two choices. I can stop my server here so I can install another package, or I can keep the server running and I could open up another command prompt and browse into the same directory. Could do either one. I'll just stop this with Control C. So let's install that accounting package. We're not really going to use it. Well, we may use it later for formatting currency. So I'm going to add a command prompt, stop my application, and type npm install accounting. I'm not going to install this globally. I'm just going to install it for this particular application. So I'll install that package. Just close. And now if I go back and look at my folder, when I ran that install, because it wasn't global, it created a node modules folder. So this is new, it got auto-created by running that npm install. And now when I look, here's a copy, it downloads a copy of that package locally into the application. So now I could go ahead and require that package and use any of the functions that are inside of it. Which we'll do a bit later. So when you install it without the G, it will copy that package to your application inside of Node modules. If you install it globally, it puts it in your profile, in effect, on your machine, on your development machine, and then any of your Node apps can use it. Okay, so to start my app again, if I just type npm start, my server's running again. Up and running. Now we won't need to do this for every web page. We're not going to create and run our own server. We're going to later on, starting probably next week, we're going to use the Express framework. Express does all this stuff for us. It starts the server and it will start listening for that event loop. We don't have to code it manually. but we can actually do this with Node, just with basic Node. We've got the ability to handle HTTP requests and send responses to a browser. Now, we could include HTML in this too. If we wanted to. Sorry, I think I went too far. Yes, I did go too far. Sorry, where was it? So we'll use Express to do some of this stuff next week. We could include HTML in here if we want, right? If we want this to be we want HTML formatting in our response, well, we can certainly do it. My server's running, NodeMon noticed me, put in those H1 tags, so it automatically restarts. I'm not sure why it's not recognized. Oh, I guess because my file has a JavaScript extension. It's not recognized as the HTML. So maybe that's not a good idea to do it that way. We'll take those out. So I save, it restarts again. Problem solved. So it's a good idea to run NodeMon so we're not stopping and restarting our application as we're building it. We obviously don't need this in a production environment, but this works well on our development machines. Port 3000 is pretty common. We don't have to use port 3000. That's the default, though, when all of our applications from now on, rather than writing the server ourselves, as I start next week, we're going to use Express. 3000 is the default specified for Express. So we'll probably just run everything on localhost :3000. So we've kind of talked about all of this stuff. So everything I've talked about in terms of everything that's happening in our code, what the response.write and request response are. This is all described in these slides. These notes are all on Blackboard. Okay, so you guys have this for future reference. It's all here. The intro to Node slides are all of these, so you have these notes. Not really going to talk about Connect. I think we'll skip over this part. There's one other parameter I should just mention. So our create server has request and response. There's an optional third parameter we can run here, and the name of that one is called next. Anybody have an idea? Want to take a wild guess what next might mean or what it might do? So we've got the HTTP request. We can generate and send a response back. This next parameter is optional. What do you think it would do? Good guess. The next request is always handled here, because remember, this is an event listener, right? Did a request come in? This handles all the requests. This handles all of the responses from our application. So what could next refer to if it's not a request?
Next response.
Not the next, because again, the response is those are all handled here. This is any request and any response is handled continuously in a loop. What else could we be dealing with besides HTTP requests and responses? Well, next means anything else we want the application to do while it's handling requests and responses. Maybe it's checking something in the database. Maybe it's sending emails. Maybe it's running some other kind of server process, logging, auditing. So this can be anything else that our application needs to do that it can continue to do while it's waiting for requests and response and the response loop.
So that's basically the asynchronous?
Yeah, that's the, well, they're both the asynchronous part because this runs continuously, right? It listens. We're constantly listening. Is there a request? Send a response. Is there a request? So it's doing this part. But if there's something else we want our application to do in the background, yes, that can happen asynchronously while it's also managing the requests and responses. So we're not only limited to handling HTTP requests and sending HTTP responses, but our server could do anything else we need it to do. You know, write to a log file, do anything else that we might want to happen in the background. And because we've used this anonymous function, it's a callback, it's asynchronous. So it won't block. It can do multiple things at a time and just comes back. So here's, let's say we want three things to happen. We want to listen for an HTTP request. We want to be writing stuff to a log file in the background. And then when our request processing is done, we want to send a response. Here's the order it would happen in. We get the request in. We start writing our response, but maybe this response is long, right? Or maybe our request involves connecting to the database to fetch information, like a Facebook profile, and then send back that response. That's going to take some time to get everything in someone's Facebook profile and render that response. So we can start processing the request, then we can go ahead, do our logging, and as soon as our request is done, then we can move on to the response. So this doesn't have to happen one after the 1, 2, 3. It can be start 1, do 3, come back to 1, then do 2. It's all asynchronous. So it's going to happen quickly, and our user won't be waiting. That's exactly the idea. So we don't have to have next, but we might. These are pretty similar to the examples we've already done. So I'm not going to go in here. Okay, actually, let's try this version. This is using a separate NPM package called Connect. Connect kind of handles the HTTP, creating the server. You'll notice we don't use the create server here. So what this does is it actually allows us to map different URLs, to interpret requests based on the URL. So if we look at these lines of code here, here's what it's going to do. It's going to listen for any requests made to the URL /hello, and if it gets a request at /hello, it's going to run this function. It's going to run a hello world function that sets the header and prints a message that says hello world. It will also listen for requests that come in at the URL /goodbye. If it gets that request, it's going to do something else. It's going to run a goodbye world function instead. So in Node in a HTML or PHP application, the URLs just load a file and we run the code in that file. In Node applications, it's broken up. We can basically interpret any URL, we can do anything we want at that URL. It doesn't have to load a particular page. It can just run a function in our code. And that code could either send a response back, or we could decide what page we want to load or render. We have full control. So here's one of the nice things about this. This is really helpful when we're doing form posts, right? Think about how we did it in PHP. We'd build a form, and then we'd build a save page, and the form would post to the save page. So we'd have it on two separate pages. Here, we could simply map a URL. Let's say we have a URL, you know, my site /register. It's going to be a form. We could then map two different types of requests at that URL. When we get a GET request at /register, we're going to show the form. If we get a POST request at /register, we're going to process the form and save it. Do I want to do this example? Do we have time?
Yeah, about 10 minutes until the evacuation.
We got 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, we can try it. So I'm going to stop my server. First thing we need to do is we need to install this package called Connect. It kind of handles some of it, similar to HTTP, it handles some of the HTTP library, and Express is built on top of it. So I'll run the command npm install connect. I'm not installing it globally, I'm just installing it for this site. So I'm just getting a warning that I don't have a README file. That doesn't matter. So it's installed it in my lesson 3 node modules connect. Here it is. So it's been installed. It's added this folder. So now in server.js, I'm going to rename this file. And I'll create a new. So I'm going to save this one as, call that server1.js, and I'll make a new server.js file. Delete this one. So I'll make a new server.js file. So we'll link to the connect package. So I'll create a variable called connect, and we'll just require the npm package we just installed. So now we're going to create a new app using Connect. So typically we'll call our application app. It's a common variable. I'm not going to worry about the logging part of the application. So I'm going to create a function called hello world. We don't need next, I don't think. We could leave it out. So it's an anonymous function, right? It's going to be a callback. It'll run asynchronously. And we'll just set the header. So our response.write head. This is the same as what we did before. We'll write 200. And we'll set the content type to text plain. So this is similar to how we did it in our first server example. Send a hello response. This time I'll do it in one line of code, so I'll just use response.end. So when the user goes to localhost 3000/hello, we want our hello world function to get called. We're then going to create a goodbye world function that's exactly the same as this, except we're going to replace the word hello on line 8 and on line 15 with goodbye. So we have two different responses. Now we just need to do the URL mapping. So our application knows how to interpret different requests that come in and what it should do. So these are both asynchronous with anonymous functions. They will be non-blocking. So now the way that we do the URL routing, so route each URL to the proper function. There's a function of our Connect application called use. So if we get a request at localhost 3000/hello, we want to call hello world. If our request comes in at /goodbye, we're going to call that function instead. And I think now we can just call app.listen 3000. And we can print a message. So we're going to get the same result we got with our first version of server.js, except now we've got, in effect, two pages running, each one that will run at a different URL. But the URL mapping in Node, it doesn't happen automatically. We have to manually tell Node how to interpret every URL request. Not only based on the URL, but also based on whether it's a get, a post, or something else. Actually, I don't think we need these brackets here after the names of our functions, because we're just calling the variables. So I just took out the brackets here and here. We'll pack up in a minute. So my app's not running. I'm just going to try it to see where we're at. So I'll use npm start. So now if I go to localhost/hello, it runs my hello world function. If I go to localhost 3000/goodbye, it loads that other function. If I load some other page, right, what does this message mean? Cannot get.
Get command?
Right, get is the default HTTP request method. So it's looking for a get request in my Node application. It wants to find instructions. What do I do with a get request at this URL? Well, we've only mapped two URLs, hello and goodbye. We haven't mapped anything else. So Node doesn't know what to do. We haven't given it any instruction. So what this will look like later on in a few weeks, just to show you where this kind of goes to when we use Express, it will look something like this eventually. So here we'll have a home page. I'll leave that one. If the user goes to /add, we're going to display the page articles add. If they do a post at /add, we're going to save and create a new article and redirect back to the main page. If we have a get, what do you suppose is happening here? A get with a colon ID, what would we be doing?
Form ID.
Yeah, we're going to do a GET request where we're looking up a record. So we're going to query the database and then display our edit view. If we have a delete, we're going to run a GET request at this. So we, in our node applications, we actually define what to do at every URL. And sometimes it might be invisible, right? If it's a delete, all we're going to do is connect to the database, basically delete that record and direct the user somewhere else. We don't even need to build a delete page. We can just write the code to do what we need it to do. So we don't even necessarily have to have an actual view or a web page at every URL. Could just be, and that's really how APIs work, right? We get a request in at a URL, we do some processing, and we send back some data. There's nothing for the user to see. We don't send them back a web page or load a URL. We just maybe send them back the data they want, or we process the information they give us. But there's no visual interface component whatsoever. Okay. So this may seem like a lot of work. Well, hey, in PHP or .NET, I don't have to do this. The user requests a URL, I just load that page and it runs the code. It's true, but this gives us a lot of control and flexibility as to how we interpret every different request.
Could this potentially give us more security? It's like if we were to write in the security ourselves.
Absolutely, because all the code lives in here on the back end. So we don't have to put code in our pages that get published to a web server. Right? There is no front-end interface if we don't want there to be. We don't have to send back all, we could just, this could be an API that goes to the database and sends back JSON. Right? We could do something like this. And yes, so rather than sending back hello world, maybe I want to send back this. I'll try it this way. I'm going to send back a JSON object.
I locked down notification again.
So let's say I want to send back JSON instead. NodeMon should restart my app. And now if I go to hello, now I'm sending back JSON. So this is how I would do an API, right? Maybe someone's going to query our database. We're going to send them back data from our database in JSON. There's no page to view. So we've got full control. So building an API here is really easy. Rather than doing processing and loading a view, we just do some processing and send back some JSON. Just undo. Well, actually, you know what? I think I like that example. I think I'm going to keep it. That's what I'm doing.
May I have your attention, please? In a few minutes, the fire alarm system will be activated for the following buildings: F, A, J, and the residence. Please act as if this is a real emergency. You are required to evacuate the building. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm actually going to put this back.
Destiny out the herd. So should we pack?
I honestly, you know what, I guess we'll see, we won't yet, we'll see if we can take a pause here